Hello, I'm Rad and welcome to Good Game Well Played. Today we're going to be putting the pedal to the metal as we speed off on a learning excursion about the meticulous racing simulator, iRacing. Fang it! iRacing is simulated racing turned up to 11. And then a little bit past 11. And then they pretty much just twist the knob right off because your numbers don't mean shit here, and there's no analogy that can capture the dedication to accuracy in this simulator. Released for PC in 2008, there is a glorious attention to detail that only exists when people are allowed to work on their passion. I mean, these crazy developers actually scan real racetracks using lasers to achieve ultimate realism. They even include information that I didn't know affected racing, like the changing heat of the road and amount of rubber left on the track. This realism has also been recognized by professional drivers, some of whom have used the game as a training tool. And honestly, it feels a little bit dirty to be calling this a game. It's a way of life. Motorsports are also one of the only sports that can be accurately represented in a simulator. Whilst FIFA doesn't really make you feel like you've just played a game of football, and Wii Boxing definitely doesn't feel like being the next Rocky Balboa, you can simulate the experience of driving a car. Pretty much everything but the G-force, which, admittedly, is a sizable omission, but if they could do it, you bet your bottom dollar they would. From inception, iRacing was developed with competition in mind. They have an official sanctioning body and sporting code, as well as a competition committee. And they run a World Championship Series, which awards tens of thousands of dollars in cash prizes annually. Plus, they actually care about how safe you drive. It's all the tension and endurance of real-life motorsports made much more accessible through the power of video games. As is often the case with scenes of this ilk, the community is what really sets it apart. So let's go meet some of that community. I'm joined now by Madison Down, who is the best iRacer in Australia, is that correct?
You could say that.
You could say that?
You could say that.
So how did you get your start in iRacing?
So I was about 15 when I first got onto iRacing, so I hadn't actually driven real cars at that stage yet, and haven't looked back ever since.
I find the iRacing kind of scene and community really interesting because it's very much based on real motorsports, much more than kind of other esports. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so iRacing uses lots of real licenses. So everything that iRacing gets into the game is there in the real world. So all of the series are officially licensed, all the tracks are licensed, laser scanned, all perfect, dead on. So in Australia, the big one for us is the V8 Supercar series, which, there's a Holden and Ford in iRacing and about, 3 Australian tracks. So the V8 Supercar being an Australian series, that's what most people want to jump on and try and emulate the real world. But there's also a lot of series in there, GT3, Formula One, NASCAR, lots of big series around the world that iRacing has. So yeah, it's basically an exact replica of the real thing.
Yeah, it's insane. And you guys use your real names in the game.
Yeah,
and you have licenses that are tied to you.
Yeah, correct. So even that aspect of it is very similar. So you start down the very bottom racing in basically Mazda MX-5 road cars, and you race them on fairly easy tracks, and you work your way up through the ranks. So it's very much, it's not really a game career mode in a way. It's almost like a real career. You're actually moving forward with your own name and making a name for yourself and moving up through the ranks eventually to the Pro World Championship if you can get that high.
Yeah. So obviously you got into it because you like cars and you like driving. But what do you think it would be like going into it if you were just wanting to play a really realistic driving game? How much do you think you need to know about cars?
You need to know a fair bit. It's not just the driving aspect of it, it's also the car setup aspect of it. So the cars have so many things to adjust, and that more often than not is the difference between winning and losing. Obviously driving is a massive part of it, but the car setup, there's so many things you can change, so many variations, and you need to change it to suit any of the tracks that you're driving on. So that's probably where a lot of the time goes in. So you need to try and learn a little bit about engineering to do with race cars, which is tough. That's really tough for newcomers. I remember when I was 15,
Yeah.
looking up real racing books, trying to find anything I could on how to set cars up. But also, if you're not into racing, you would probably need to watch some racing just to get an idea of strategies and how to drive and how to get the most out of a race car and all that. So it'd definitely be very, very tough if you didn't have any interest in cars or racing or had just started. You'd have a massive learning curve.
So do you see a career path for yourself through iRacing or through motorsports at all, or is this just something you do because you're passionate about it?
Motorsport's a tough one to get involved in. The amount of money that is involved with it is huge, particularly real world. Even in iRacing, to get a whole simulator set up is quite pricey. But in saying that, sim racing has got a lot of people a start in racing, including myself. If you can have some success in the sim and market yourself properly, I think there is a path that you could end up in a real race car. It's been done by Nissan GT Academy overseas. Those guys run a worldwide competition on Gran Turismo, and that sees real gamers entering real cars and racing. Yeah, there's definitely a career path there, which is very, very hard to break into.
Yeah. So how much training would you do to be able to be competitive in iRacing?
To be at the very top, quite a lot. Basically, the more track time you've got, the faster you'll be. With iRacing, the big thing is actually not so much learning to drive, because most of the really quick guys already know how to drive. It's more that car setup that I was speaking about, where you've got to spend a good probably 5 to 10 hours getting the setup of the car right. Otherwise, if you drive around with something that's not quite
5
right,
to 10 hours.
yeah, like you'll be pretty quick without a setup that doesn't quite work. To get that extra half a second, it doesn't sound like much, but to get about half a second, sometimes even tenths, you need that set up underneath you, and that's the thing that takes a lot of time. It's just trial and error. You'll sit there for 3 or 4 hours at a time sometimes, and you'll find about half a tenth, and half a tenth
Wow.
is not a lot of time. So yeah,
But it's
very
all
tough.
the time you need.
Exactly. Well, in
first
the
and
World
second.
Championship, the whole field, 40 cars, is separated by usually less than a second. So I remember in one of the rounds having a teammate say to me, "Matt, if you can find half a tenth, we'll jump 10 spots on the
Oh
grid."
my goodness.
So it's
No pressure.
yeah. Yeah, well, they're sitting there watching me do qualifying and saying, "We just need half a tenth and we'll jump halfway up the grid." But
Goodness.
yeah, it sounds a lot easier than it is.
Well, can you show me how it's done?
Absolutely, yep.
So is the right lever gear up, left lever's gear down?
Yeah, so paddle shift set up for me. So basically, yeah, right is gear up, left gear down. Oh.
And you don't need to use the clutch at all.
No, not in this car.
And you're doing this like a single car, but how many cars would be on the track for a race?
The Bathurst 1000 that we did, we had 50 cars on track.
I can't imagine how difficult this would be with 50 cars around you.
Yeah, it's a little bit to think about. It's just, yeah, when you got to follow cars, sometimes you can't really see where you're going when there's a car right in front of you. It's a
Yeah.
little bit challenging.
So are all the tyre marks on the road like burnt in from previous races?
They'll be just there for a texture. It's a solid baked texture that iRacing just puts in to make sure it looks realistic.
Yeah.
However, as a race goes on, the track will actually rubber up. So it rubbers up where the cars drive, and it also, if you run wheels through the grass or in the dirt, it actually drags dirt across onto
Right.
the track. And it also develops balls of rubber. So once the track is like really rubbered up,
Yeah.
little pieces of rubber fly off the tyres, and if you run wide onto them, it's more slippery because it's effectively, in racing terms, they call it driving on marbles.
Right.
It's basically driving on little
Yeah.
marbles, so very slippery. So over a long race, you'll start to develop those few things. Oop, grab the wall. Yeah, so that up the top you can see it was said contact time 0, which means it just grazed the wall. Obviously that's something that at this track is a big risk. So when you're doing a 1,000 kilometre race with this many walls around, you've kind of got to concentrate on that, because if you do damage the car, see, I was lucky before just grabbing the wall that it didn't actually do really any damage. So there will probably be a little bit, but it hasn't affected it. Eventually I'll probably throw it into the wall with this little session here, but and that'll be able to show you what it looks like when you do have proper damage. Basically bends all the suspension, bends all the geometry of the car, so the wheels start facing every which way. And
the wheel.
that's all right, it's straight. That number that I have, that's on the screen, the big green numbers, that's a delta time, which is showing my current fastest lap. So it's showing me when I'm up and when I'm down. So at the moment it's in the green, so it's saying you're slightly faster on this particular lap.
And is the goal to always be going like as fast as possible? Or?
Yeah, so basically you always want to be going as quick as you possibly can. Whoa, yeah. So that's a graphic demo, and then if I drive it away from that, if I actually can drive it away from that, I can't.
No.
So that's, yep, that's pretty finished. So with that, I've just made a slight mistake there across the curb, and that's how easy it happens. So basically, in technical terms, I've missed the apex just here, and that's about a car width wide of where I need to be.
Right.
And basically there's no grip out here. It's just hit that curb fairly hard, and now we're in big trouble.
Oh my goodness.
And then we have a very big accident. So as you can see, that's completely ruined the car. Yeah, that one's actually quite a big shunt. Yeah, cool. You want to have a go?
Yes, please. Da-da. Oh, it already feels fast. Oh my goodness. There's like a pull on the wheel.
Yeah, so that you'll feel quite a lot of feedback through the wheel. So
I like how I'm going like 30. Is this kilometers or miles?
35 kilometers, yep.
And I'm like, oh dear.
Yep, so give it some throttle.
Oh.
So this driving line on the screen, that'll show you where green is under full throttle, and when it turns red is when you'll be on the brakes. And it'll show you the general line of where you should be driving.
Going real quick.
You're going quicker than highway speed now, so up to 130.
And I'm gonna need to start braking. And
Go down a few gears.
Easy does it.
Yep, there you go.
Easy does it.
Yep, so bring in the throttle.
Are the gears like the gear speeds that you would need to be at different for a car like this than for a domestic car?
Yeah, so with a race car, because you're trying to drive it as fast as you possibly can, with this particular car, the V8 Supercar, you'll rev it all the way up to 7,500 RPM, which not many people would do. Mechanics probably wouldn't like you very much if you revved your everyday car
right.
up to 7,500 RPM on a daily basis. Most of the time, you're driving it as you would a road car at the moment, and doing 100 Ks in almost top gear, which is what you would do under normal driving circumstances.
That's what I know.
Yeah, that's what people are taught to do. That's the way that we drive on the road. But with a racing simulator, or just racing in general, you're trying to get the car around the track as fast as you possibly can.
I am picking up speed.
You are. This is actually around about the quickest speed we've been so far.
Yep.
Heading into a few corners though. Just hit the brakes.
Slow down, shall
A little bit
we?
harder on the brakes. Yep, there you go.
Yep.
There we go. Got it stopped.
Yep.
It is a tough track, this too, though. Bathurst is definitely... This has got to be the steepest learning curve, because I don't think anyone that plays iRacing for the first time on the brakes... Oh, it's in the wall.
Can we reverse out of this?
Go down.
No, we're fine. I don't need a tow.
Yeah, so even a hit like that, in a race, that flag, which is commonly referred to as the meatball flag or mechanical black flag.
Yeah.
That's the in-game race control. Yeah. So actually, it's a good example. The steering wheel here is slightly off center.
Yeah.
So you can see that you've actually bent the steering with that hit on the wall. So now the steering wheel's slightly off center.
And I can feel that the car's like...
It'll be pulling to
and
one way.
and...
Yeah. On the brakes. A little bit harder. Oh, we're gonna go off.
No, we're fine. Uh-oh. I've made mistakes.
Yeah, so that gives you an
Yeah.
idea. Even a small hit like that in a race, that flag means you would have to come into the pits within 3 laps and fix the damage, because race control, or iRacing race control, is saying that the car is unsafe.
Yeah,
So
right.
the damage done is too much.
Oh, just finish one lap. Just finish one lap.
You're back to the start.
Yeah.
Yep, so on the brakes.
I ignore the driving line a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I think I know better. I'm like, oh, we can totally get there. I was about to say I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job, and then that happened.
That hit there's really done a lot of damage.
I can feel it. The car doesn't want to go where I want it to
you see
go.
the wheel now is massively off center, and you can see it pulling around left and right. We'll get you a new car.
I wish real life was like this.
Yeah.
You crash
see,
the
this
car and it's
is-
like, I'll just get you a new one.
So the front of it here is the damage that you're feeling. That's what the front of it looked like. in the end.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, we'll go back to the start. We'll get you this new car and have another go at it. Yeah, a track like this, very difficult track. So this track actually takes even the best of the sim racers a while to come to grips with.
Yeah.
Because it's such a challenging track.
Well, if real life had a driving line, I think it would help people out a lot.
I think it would, yeah. In real life, all you can really do is the darker patch on the road is obviously where the rubber has gone down from a lot of other tyres off other
So
race
just follow
cars.
everyone else.
Yeah, so just follow where everyone else has gone and follow the dark black line on the road.
I don't know why I crashed there.
Yeah.
Because
It just got
I've damaged the car so heavily, basically.
partly out behind the engine.
Awesome. That's really fun. Did you know
Oh, you've lost the boot.
I'm actually on my L plates?
Oh, really?
I actually don't have a full license.
There you go.
So, knowing that, how do you think I went?
Not too bad, actually. It explains a few things. It explains a few things.
You're like, oh, okay. So how can people get involved with iRacing if they look at this and they're like, oh, that looks cool?
Yeah, so it's a subscription-based simulator. So it's $100 a year US from memory. You go to iRacing.com and you buy a membership through there and work your way up through the ranks.
Start small. Don't start with Bathurst.
Yeah, start with Mazda MX-5s. Nice and easy to drive straight away.
And how can they watch?
iRacing.com/live is a website, and for the most Australian racing is broadcast by a broadcast team called V8s Online, and they broadcast the V8 Supercar series that happens on a yearly basis. So if you like V8s Online on Facebook, you'll be able to see their stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in and showing me how it's done and teaching me how to drive on a really difficult track. That's it for Well Played, and I wanna have a bit more of a go though.
Yep, no dramas. We'll get started.
If you wanna catch more good game, you can find us on YouTube and Facebook. And if you want to internet hang out with me, you can find me on Twitter @UngHardYo. This has been Madison Down. Fang it!